I love Little Big Man, and I love your performance in it. So I'm especially delighted to have an opportunity to speak to you about it. So thank you, first of all.
Oh, thank you. No, that's very kind of you. Those are kind words. Thank you.
Well, I want to know. You have an interesting background. I want to know a little bit to what led you towards the Little Big Man opportunity. You were born in Hong Kong, were you?
That's correct. Hmm.
Was entertainment or film or any kind of performance, was that part of your upbringing?
No, not at all. It was an accident. Literally, the whole thing was just, I don't know, kismet. I have no idea. But no, I was born in Hong Kong, and obviously, result of colonization. um, and I was adopted actually to America, but as an older adoptee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because one of the things, I'm a product of not only colonization but communism. We had to flee mainland China, and so technically, to be honest with you, I was actually born in Tianjin, but I was raised in Hong Kong.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
So, yeah, it does. It does. So when you came to America,
Hmm.
what was the process that led you into film and TV?
Um, okay, this is how strange it is. Uh, my past, is just so bizarre. And when I tell people, they're going, "Oh, you should write a story about it." I wouldn't even know where to begin. Um, when I was adopted, okay, I was adopted to. I came around. I was 9, and both my sister and I were adopted at the same time. But she was a local adoption, and so she came right away. And it took a year for the process for me, for paperwork and things to come over. And so I came over when I was like 9 and a half, and I was adopted by Dr. Eccles and my mom. And it was just, how would I put it? It was such a stark contrast to my childhood. So, yeah. And so I apparently at one time, according to my mother, I had a very strong British accent, but I got rid of it very quickly because I wanted to assimilate. And as a young child, you can do these things. Um, and I grew up, how would I put it? From a single parent family to a 2-parent family with a lot of structure. And in Hong Kong, I had no structure. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it was a very different. But for some reason, both sides were very religious. So I had a lot of religious upbringing. So, so that was the only consistent thing in my life. But and of course, at this point in my life, I'm agnostic. What can I tell you? After all that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, wow, what a life you've lived. I mean, just the early part of your life can fill a book. But when did you go out on your own? Did you move to California? Was that when you went out on your own, or?
Yes, yes. I had moved. My adoptive father, just passed away, and we were very, very close. And I was just heartbroken. And my mother wanted to move back to Michigan, where she grew up. And the thought of living in Michigan was more than I can deal with. I had trouble dealing with the Four Seasons living in New York. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I came from a tropical setting. So growing up in a tropical setting and then going to the Four Seasons, it was just like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And I didn't know if I could handle one more winter. So at that point, I said to my mother, I said, I think I really need to go, oddly enough, where they surf. This is my thinking. So she says, well, I said to her, I said, where do they surf? And she goes, California. And I said, I'm going to California. And that's how I ended up here.
Wow. And
Hmm.
by happenstance, was it Robert Downey Sr. who approached you?
He did, but that was in New York. I was modeling in New York.
Oh, I see.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I was coming out of actually the garment industry. It was the 1400 Broadway building because I did some stuff for Tracy Junior Petites and stuff, different lines. And I was walking out, and he happened to see me, and he asked me if I would do a short film for him. And I didn't know what he was talking about, but I said, okay. When he told me it wouldn't take up much of my time and it was going to be painless, I said, oh, okay. So I said I would try it. And that's how I actually, that was my first piece of work was with, Robert Downey Sr. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Did you take? I imagine you took to it. I mean, it felt like something you wanted to pursue.
No, it's weird. When I grew up in Hong Kong in those days, I never even saw a television set. So acting was nothing on my mind. Does that make sense? And then as
Hmm.
a child in New York, it seems like I was always doing homework, and my parents always had their shows on, and I never got involved with TV and I don't remember any films except for Disney. The cartoons. So I really no, it was never crossed my mind. Whereas when I was young and I was in boarding school in New York, and my best girlfriend, who was Greek, very tall, Karen said we were best friends, and Karen said to me, "I want to be a model," and I said, "Okay." I said, "I guess I want to be one too." this is how it happened, and we both pursued it, and I ended up doing well in it, and she ended up not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And yeah, and then from there, of course, circumstance, brought me to California because of my father, but in the interim there, somehow Robert Downey Sr., had asked me to do the short film, and I didn't think anything of it, to be honest with you. He was fun to work with. It was easy. It was quick. And then after I walked away, I didn't think anything about it. I didn't think it was going to follow me for the rest of my life. To be honest with you, it was just
Isn't that
And then when
amazing,
I
though?
came,
Isn't that amazing when you kind of follow a course that's set in front of you instead of resisting it? I mean, your life can take such incredible turns, unexpected turns. It's amazing how life kind of works its way.
well, what I've discovered, it seems like, because I didn't think anything would, first of all, after I did it, I didn't think anything of it because the last thing I thought was that I was going to end up in films in California. And that would keep on popping back in my life. It's funny, you do something, it just keeps on following you. So you got to be careful what you do because it follows you.
Well, you did good stuff, so that's
Yeah.
that's a good thing to be following you. So how did you? I would imagine Little Big Man resulted from a traditional audition process.
It did, but again, it was strange how it happened. When I was leaving, I was dating this gentleman, and when I was leaving to go to California, I went to break up with him, say goodbye to him, and he said to me, he goes, "Well, where are you going to go?" And I said, "I really don't know, but I'm going to go surf." And he says, "You just can't go, without having a place." But that's not how I thought. I thought I'd just go there and rent an apartment, you know what I'm saying, once I got there. And he says, "You don't know the areas, you don't know, neighborhoods." And, and he had several fashion lines, and he had one here in the garment district in Los Angeles. And so he says, if you don't mind, I would much, feel much better if you stayed at one of my reps' homes. And I said, "Oh, okay." So he, made the arrangements so I would stay with one of his reps. I forgot his name, to be honest with you. Very nice gentleman, but he lived, one of the high rises, which we didn't have in Los Angeles at the time, but it was one of the two high rises in Century City. So I said, "Oh, okay." So he made the arrangements, but when I got there, after being used to big, cities like Hong Kong and New York, when I was flying over Los Angeles, all I saw was flat buildings, small buildings with pools. I started crying, and I started thinking maybe I made the wrong decision. So by the time he picked me up to the airport, and by the time I got to his place, I never stopped crying. And the poor man, he didn't know what to do with me because I was just beside myself. I was convinced I had made a terrible mistake. I should go back to the city, and what am I doing here in this, place just full of swimming pools and flat homes? So I was crying for about a week on his couch, and I had brought my kitten. I had brought a cat from New York with me, and between the cat and I, he was a bachelor, and I guess his velvet couches and things were important to him, and he couldn't wait to get both of us out of there. So one day he comes to me and he said, "Listen," he says, "would you mind?" He said, "You really need to just leave the apartment and just go out and do something." He goes, "Can I set you up on a blind date?" And I said, "Okay, if you really want me to." And he goes, "Yes." He says, "We need to do this." And so the next thing you know, I'm at the Playboy Club on Sunset in Los Angeles. And as I'm walking in, Jack Gilardi sees me, and apparently he was looking for an actress for a David Swift film. And I guess I fit the bill. So he came up to the table where we were, and I don't even know who these people were, but one of them was a producer, and his wife was Marie Wilson, who I guess was an actress, an old-time actress, and I don't know. Anyway, and so Jack asked about me and said, "Would you mind bringing her to Columbia tomorrow?" And they said, "Oh, sure, no problem." So they made arrangements, and next thing you know, I'm at Columbia Studios the next morning, and I'm meeting all these different people. And to be honest with you, I had no idea what I was doing. So when I was walking out, Jack Gilardi walks out with me, and he says to me, he goes, "So how do you feel?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "All these people just keep on asking me questions." And he says, "They really love you." And I said, "Well, that's nice." And he goes, "But there's a problem." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "You have no personality." And I'm like, "Okay, what did I do wrong?" He says, "You have to talk." And I said, "Well, and the way I grew up, you don't really talk until somebody talks to you. You just don't start, jabbering away. You know what I'm saying?"
Yeah.
Which I do now, mind you. Now I jabber to anybody. It's terrible. I'm embarrassed.
You've got a lot of personality right now, so that's good.
Apparently I never had any though. And so I said to him, I said, "What do you mean talk?" I said, "About what?" And he goes, "I don't care." He says, "Just talk about anything that comes to mind." I said, "Okay," So the next thing they arranged a meeting with the new talent director for Columbia, because at that time they still had contract players. And so I said, so all I could think of was just talk about anything, right? And so it was Walter Bickel, who turned out to be just the dearest person in my life. But Walter was he was hysterical. So we just started talking, and I just started talking about anything that came to mind. You know what I'm saying? And pretty soon we became best friends. And he says, "Oh, absolutely." He said, "I'm going to accept you in the program." And he says, and he went and told Jerry Stokowski. He goes, he says, "She's a natural." When they all looked at him like, "Are you crazy?" So I was in the program for about a year. Well, it was very interesting, being a contract player, So because David Swift was one of my classmates, and he was probably the only one that made it from that group. Well, Tina Sinatra was supposed to be in the film, and Tina was not actually part of the program, but she was supposed to be part of the film. And then, of course, it didn't go through the budget department. But I ended up being a contract player there, and then all of a sudden they said to me one day, Walter says, there's a man who's making a film, but he says it's a different studio, so we're going to drive you over there and you're going to meet with him at CBS. And I said, "Okay." And so you're going to laugh at this because I don't even know why I'm in the industry, except I guess it was just meant to be. Because when I met Arthur Penn, I didn't know what to think. It's one thing to be a contract player, and doing skits and scenes, all right? But that's not really actually getting a film. I never thought about what would happen if I actually got a film. And for some reason, Arthur Penn, as he was interviewing me, he goes, "I think you're Sunshine." And that freaked me out so badly that I burst out crying. And I told him, "No, I'm not." And the more I cried and resisted, the more he thought I was fabulous. And tried to convince me I really am Sunshine. And he explained to me that he's been looking for like over a year in all the different reservations because he tried very hard to keep everything rather authentic. In fact, he was a stickler for that, and he wanted real Indians to play their parts. But unfortunately, I guess a lot of Indians don't emote, and he needed somebody who emoted. And I was a basket case, so he loved me.
Yeah.
And yeah, what can I tell you? So I just wanted to leave, and he said to me, no, you just stay, don't worry, I'm going to call an actor over here, and I'm going to have him work with you, and you're going to run lines together, and go to the coffee shop across the way and have some lunch and just talk and relax. And he says, you'll feel better. And I'm thinking, okay. So the actor comes, they kept me there for the day, we kept on working on lines, went back in there, and ran the lines. That I was comfortable with because I was trained at that point, you know what I'm saying? Just to do that aspect of it. But afterwards, he said to me, "Do you think you want to be in this film?" And I'm going, "Absolutely not." and I was underage at the time still. So he says, "Would you mind if I got permission from your mother?" And I said, "Yeah, because I don't want to do this." And he goes, "Well, why don't?" He says, "Would you mind if your mother and I talked about this?" And so that's how it came about.
Wow. So what finally convinced you to give it a go?
They did. Because my mother signed the contract, and all of a sudden I was in the film. What can I tell you?
I understand that Arthur Penn was a great guiding force for you. That he was very paternal in a way.
He was wonderful. I feel so lucky. Well, that this man was, he was my first, director, and that I feel like what we went through and what he showed me is what I've taken with me for the rest of my life. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I've worked, in other films, but they weren't in that caliber. He was just such a perfectionist, and he was a kind, compassionate, gentle person, but above all of that, he was just a perfectionist and just an incredible craftsman.
He was. We've done several shows on Arthur and some of his movies, and my goodness, I mean, just a giant of cinema, and every interview I've seen of him from the past, he comes across as so genuine and authentic and gentle spoken, like you said. What was his directorial style? How did he work with you?
Well, he was very cautious of me. I think because I was like a flight risk, because I didn't want to be there. So he kept me for the duration of the film, which is not normally heard of, because normally you do your part and you leave, and then you come back, for any pickup shots. But for me, he wanted me to feel comfortable on the set, and so he literally kept me there. And it was a long shoot, by the way. I just want to let you know. From the time we were in Montana through Calgary, Canada. I mean, I was on there for the whole shoot. And he, I don't know, he was just so thoughtful. Like for the baby scene, he knew I never had a baby, so he had his wife. And that's the other thing that was so I love that whole set for that reason. It was like a family affair. His family was there. We would have dinners together. We would play Scrabble together. We just, with his son. His son was quite young at the time. And Dustin at the time was married to a ballerina, and she had her not his child, but a child from another marriage, and she was there as well. So it was just a family affair. And even though it was a very big set, you didn't feel that.
Mm.
You just felt. It sounds weird, but it almost felt like a small collaboration. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, no, he was, yeah. So he just was very thoughtful. He would talk to me about things. How do you feel about having a baby? And I said, I don't know. I've never had a baby. He says, do you feel uncomfortable doing the scene? And I said, well, I don't know where to begin. And he says, okay. He says, let me have my wife talk to you about it, and maybe from that, he says, you'll understand. I said, okay. And so she literally, she talked me through the whole labor scene.
Mm. That is
Yeah,
extraordinary.
mm-hmm.
You were given a front row seat to observe the entire process of making a film. Your first time out, and I'm wondering, did that spoil you? Were you under the impression that all film sets were going to be like that?
That's interesting you say that. I think it made me aware when I wasn't around that type of professionalism. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Well,
I think what I experienced was so unique.
It was.
It's not the norm. Mm-hmm.
And you said that Arthur was a stickler for historical accuracy, and I'm wondering, did he send you off on a trail of research of women of that time and of that tribe? Did you do research for the film?
In a weird way, it just came to us. Does that make sense? Because all of my clothing was from a museum. Most of our clothing, except for the extras, were from museums. So we had to be very careful of them. And then, of course, there was dialogue about, the different tribes and how, like, the Cheyennes is very muted colors and the Apaches are more colorful. And, we learned a lot just from our wardrobe, to be honest with you, the discussion about them. And Arthur also hired all locals. So we had a lot of Indians everywhere. we had teepees set up everywhere. We were eating strange Indian food, intestine stuffed with inedible meats and things. And it was, how did I put it? It was like a deep submersion into the whole culture.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did
because
you
the
ever?
Blackfoot was there, and
Did you
they
ever?
literally lived amongst us. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Well, the Blackfoot tribe was most of them, the extras were the Blackfoot tribe in the area in Montana, and so they lived amongst us. I mean, literally. Their tents were pitched outside our doors and things, and we interacted constantly, and yeah.
What was Dustin Hoffman like as an acting partner?
Well, I love him. Okay, so when I say this, he is a sweetheart, but he is, gosh, how did I put it? He's definitely actor studio all the way through. Yeah,
I understand. Especially back then. I mean, he just broke through in a big way just right before that movie.
Yes. So, talk about submersion. We had a few bouts of things in the tent. Because it was to the point where he just wanted to be so much a part of his character that he wouldn't even use Kleenexes. And when we were in, I forgot, it was like 20 below zero in Banff, he would, his nose would be running, and he would just be wiping all over the place and snorting it up, and got to the point where I got so annoyed with him. I'm like, darn you. I said, just break free and use a box of Kleenex. This method acting is driving me crazy.
Yeah. But gosh, what a wildly entertaining movie. I just rewatched it last week, and I was just reminded of just how great just how great it was. Did you have an opportunity to see Arthur again over the years after that movie?
No, I did not. Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah. The people, that's the one thing about people that work in film. You get so extraordinarily close to people, and then you just go your separate ways. It's like drifting from one family to another in a way.
You know, the person I am today is not the person I was then. Does that make sense? Because I've grown a lot. And I think back on it because when he passed away, it was like it sounds crazy, but it was like a family member passing away. It broke my heart, you know. And I thought about the fact that how I didn't contact him. I didn't reach out to him. And I think the person I am today would have probably done that. But the person I was then, I was just so used to so many doors being closed and just moving forward, you know. I mean, from being adopted and leaving one country and then coming to a new country, I just, you know, and even at that time when I was a child growing up, we didn't have cell phones. And so with my friends, if I became friends with them, I was almost afraid not to. They lived far away from me because I could never make those long-distance calls. Mm. So isn't that strange? So to me, it was almost like I just was always thinking forward, never looking back. You know, if something was finished, it was finished for me, totally.
I understand.
And I think that has to do with my childhood. Since then, obviously, I've matured, and I, as a parent, tried not to do. How can I say it? I tried to keep a consistency in my children's life, even when we moved, or well, just so that they had continuity, because it's something I never had.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand totally.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted one more question about Little Big Man. Did you finally see it when it was released, and were you comfortable watching yourself, and what did you think of the film?
Well, Arthur actually would make me sit in the dailies, so it was a painful process, you know, for a person seeing themselves. I don't know how other people feel, but I'm so critical that it's just a very painful process. I hate watching myself. And but he thought it was important that I see myself. And so I saw most of it. But then when it was edited, that's when I was fascinated because, you know, it's one thing to see the raw footage and then see the edited version. All of a sudden you see a performance. And that's when I realized editing can literally make a film. Say.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's weird. Arthur actually taught me the love of filmmaking. Does that make sense? And I really love the whole process. Yeah.
Well, you know,
that first introduction was so special.
Your death scene in the movie is so heartbreaking because, and I suppose it was the way you were directed to perform it, but you're almost trying to run away from it. And that struggle to run away from death, that broke my heart when I watched it last week. It was such an affecting moment. There's not a question in there. It was just something I wanted to share with you.
I haven't seen it in years, to be honest with you. So.
Well, it was a great moment. I wanted to ask you about just one more film. Which was your follow-up to Little Big Man when you worked with Roger Vadim, Pretty Maids All in a Row. And this is I'm asking you about this because this is kind of an extraordinary movie, especially when you think of a movie like that can't be made today. I mean, it's a totally different environment. And I'm wondering, were you aware that movie was going pretty far as you were doing it?
Oh, you know, having a mother like I have, my adopted mother who is so religious and has a very strong Elizabethan morality, I didn't want to do it. Another film I didn't want to do. Because when I read the script, I was just, I was mortified. I thought, oh my gosh, you know, what, I did it and didn't tell my family. How's that for you?
Mm.
And then they found out. Because my agent kept on pushing me to do it. He told me, you know, Raja Vadim is known for discovering beautiful women. So if you are in one of those, in his film, automatically you're one of the most beautiful women. And I'm thinking, well, it is so sleazy. This is what I'm thinking. It's terrible. but then, you know, at a very young age, I mean, obviously, very early on in the industry, if I heard one more time, you know, there is no bad press. Any press is good press. So I'm thinking any movie is good movie, I guess. And that's what my my agent was telling me. You know, it's the director. It doesn't matter about the content. You know, don't worry about it. All of your nude scenes are going to be, you know, in a closed set. They're giving me all these reasons why I should feel comfortable about it. And so I did it because of that. Because I was talked into it again. See?
Yeah.
Jamie, I think I'm very easily talked into it.
Wow. Well, I mean, some great work resulted out of it, and some really interesting movies of the period. But I'm wondering, did you decide to leave the industry and take your life in a different direction, and what led to that decision?
I think it was kind of made for me. Does that make sense? It was just like the industry, getting into the industry. That was a decision, wasn't based upon something I sought after, but obviously the universe wanted me there. I think there was a point in my life where I started really questioning if this is all there is, because living in Los Angeles, especially at that time, there is, how do I put it? Almost anything went. Does that make sense? And I really questioned my morality, my sense of belonging, where I want to be in the future. And so at one point I thought, well, maybe it's time to do the traditional thing and start a family. And being traditional, I thought maybe I should get a husband. No, it all happened accidentally. About the time I was thinking about this, somebody I had known for a long time in the industry, but in the commercial end of it, approached me, about marriage, oddly enough. And I said, well, you know something? I said, I would only do it if I could have children. I mean, but he had been married before and had children. And I said, I don't know if he would want to do that again, you know? And he goes, no. He goes, I'd love to do that again. And I'm thinking, okay, well. So I decided to start a family. And at that point, we had made an agreement that I wanted to be at home with them until they started school. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't want all those milestones, you know, somebody else would enjoy all those milestones. And so that was the agreement, but I didn't know I married somebody who had an addiction. And when I discovered it, it became very hard for me because it was difficult. I didn't want my children around it. So I ended up becoming a single mother. And that's what happened. Mm-hmm.
Do you have...
And as a single parent, I just didn't want to, because I know what it entails as an actress. I didn't want to put them through it.
Oh, yeah. It's mm-hmm. great that you had the self-awareness to know that about yourself and what you wanted, because I think a lot of people might, I mean, they're caught up in the world. They're fighting for roles. They get roles, and they define their life by that. And so I think it was probably a great thing that you decided to walk away for the sake of the family that you wanted. Do you have any regrets? Do you look upon your time in the industry fondly overall?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think there are no accidents in life. There's a reason for everything. Um, and obviously, there was a reason I was there, doing what I was doing. But then there's another chapter, and obviously, I ended up doing what I was doing with my children, parenting. But this sounds crazy, but once you're an actor, you can't help but take all those things with you. I was thinking about all those early morning shoots, and the lack of sleep, working late. It was great for parenting. I mean, I just fell right into it.
Great trading. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When it was happening, it was like, it's just another late shoot, okay? Just, that's how you sort of just think about things. Because if you can endure, on those sets in those different situations, parenting is a breeze for that. You don't complain about it, that's for sure. So, for me, that was not. I think, and my youngest daughter, believe it or not, and I couldn't believe it. She wanted to get into films, and I didn't know what to think at that point. I want to be very honest with her because it's one of those things where it's feast or famine, and if you make it, great, but a lot of people don't make it, and she wanted to become a cinematographer, and because I used to do I love photography, so she found out my old Nikons and stuff that I put away because once I had children, I couldn't go around taking time to focus, so I started using Instamatic, you know what I'm saying, to capture shots of them. So I put all my stuff away, and she found it one day, and I didn't realize she was playing with all of them, and so she got this incredible love for the camera, and because she found my old pictures, she goes, "Mom, why didn't you pursue this and this and that?" And I said, "Well, it's a different part of my life." I said, "I did pursue it for a while, but I said it's a different part of my life," and so when she went to college, I really didn't think she was going to pursue filmmaking because there's something, because she was just so brilliant in so many ways. I mean, she could have been a scientist. She just seems to, I don't know what. She was just great in the lab, and she was great, as an astronomer, and and so I'm thinking somewhere in the sciences she was going to go, and then all of a sudden, she was in the honor roll, and had to go up and announce themselves, and she was going to become a filmmaker. And I found out that way. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I sat her down and I said, "Do you understand?" I said, "It's not an easy life, honey." I said, "There's no security in it." I said, it's great when you're working, but then there's times that you don't work and you have to, figure out how to survive. And I said, maybe you should back it up and maybe just get a teaching degree. So they can teach filmmaking, because if you don't want it to work out, listen to me, I'm so bad.
No, I think that's exactly a parent's instinct and a parent's role and responsibility. And I guess if the child wants to pursue something badly enough, then nothing will stop them. But it's the parent's job to step in and say, you got to think about this. So that's an essential role you're playing by telling your daughter that.
Well, she surprised me. What can I tell you? But what was interesting when I was leading into this was when she was making her little projects. Of course, guess who had to step up and be her actress, be her best mom? I had to do the catering. I did everything that the director's mom does. You know what I'm saying? And so as I was doing all this stuff for all the little projects, she said to me, "Mom," she goes, "why don't you go back into films?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "It's changed so much." I said, "Look at you. You're in front of the computer all day long, editing, doing sound. And I'm not computer savvy." I said, "It's just changed so much. I don't know where to begin, And she says, "Well, no, Mom, it's an actress." And I said, "Well, I don't know. Again, I said, there's a lot of discrimination in Hollywood. One of them is age, okay? So I don't think this is going to work out." And so She says, but you really should just go and check it out. Check it out, okay? And I said, okay. So I thought, well, I will just take the time and go to, Screen Actors Guild and see all the programs they have available and check it out, see what the new world is about. And I have to be honest with you, Jamie. I'm so glad I was an actress when I was. I don't think I could work today. I mean, I feel so sorry for these actors and actresses. And it's interesting because all the films I see are all people being recycled. Same people over and over again being recycled. But I don't see a lot of new faces. I don't see people taking any chances, like Arthur Penn did with me, And casting, I think, is very different now because casting is such that they just want tried and true. They're scared to introduce anybody new. This is what I'm observing just from the films I've been watching. It's just everybody just recycled. And like I said, I don't see new faces, And so I don't think that the casting directors are taking chances. But I don't know. It's and then when I'm looking at, I signed up for one of those things for 1 year, just to see. I think it's called Casting Networks or whatever. It's what they used to be. They used to provide the sites and things, but now they do it online. And I'm looking at the things and I'm thinking, what is SAG doing? Oh my gosh, you're not even protecting the actors. Most of the projects are all just deferred payment. How do people live?
Wow.
And the amounts that they're offering for some of these shoots, I'm thinking, how do people live? Seriously. I don't know how actors can live living like this. And so much of it is just, they do it for the love. And then, I don't know. It's a very different world.
Interesting. But at the same time, it is also an environment where people can generate their own content, and if it strikes a nerve, it could become popular. With all the new technologies and platforms where you can create and share, work, there seems to be new avenues of opportunity outside of the normal channels.
Cable, but most of them, I think, to be honest with you, are not making that much money.
Yeah.
Unless you get into Netflix or something. Somebody likes your script from Netflix, you know what I'm saying? And so, no, I understand what you're saying, and I do like that aspect of it. So I've been playing around with that. Trying to develop an idea.
I would love to see you again performing, but I'm thankful for the performing work that you did give us during your career. Either way, so you are an absolute delight to talk to.
Well, thank you.
I did not expect to laugh this much during this interview.
Oh. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. You're so easy to talk to. It's amazing.